I'm Deborah, one of your modulators. This is part 2 of a 3-part video series on understanding controls and performing walkthroughs. Part 1 went through the theory under ISA 315 Revised. Just click here to watch it if you missed it, or if you need to revisit. Here in part 2, we'll be working on understanding Monty Travel's purchase to pay process. First, I'm going to show you how I understand processes, by drawing them. I like to have things set up so that we've got departments going one way and the phases of the transaction going the other way. Normally, boxes are steps in the process and diamonds are decision points. I'll also be using this symbol to represent databases and this one to represent automated steps. Finally, I indicate any actual documents using this symbol. Now, this is just the way that I do it. It doesn't really matter what you do as long as you're clear about it. You don't have to do a flowchart. It doesn't work for everyone, but I like them because 1, you've got to understand it or you can't draw it, and 2, it makes it really easy to see the gaps in the big picture. If this is your first time understanding a process, then I highly recommend you download a copy of the completed flowchart so that you can follow along as we go. But if you're comfortable with understanding processes, then I challenge you to try and do this independently yourself before you take a look at how I do it in this video. The flowcharts that you see me drawing in this video are all available for you to download from My Learning, so don't worry about copying everything down. Just focus on where I'm getting the information from the case study and how I'm translating that information into a process. You can always pause and rewind this video at any time, or even adjust the playback speed using the YouTube gear icon down here. Let's start at the beginning with initiation. Look at the background information and see if you can identify where Monty Travel's purchase to pay process begins. Think about what needs to be in place before purchasing happens, as well as how purchasing decisions are made. Hit pause, then press play once you've got your answer. Done? Alright, so where's our initiation point? Well, before we can buy stuff, we have to decide what to buy and who to buy from. That means negotiating new supply arrangements is the first step. Once that's done, the supply has to be set up in Monty Travel's system. This happens whenever there's a new supplier, probably on an ad hoc and continual basis. Now, what about individual purchase transactions? How are these decisions made? Monty Travel distinguishes between 2 types of purchases: general purchases and hotel accommodation, which is treated a little differently. In addition, general purchases $2,000 or less don't have to go through the purchasing department. That means the initiation point for an individual purchase transaction depends on the type of purchase and the amount. General purchases start with a purchase requisition and hotels start with a forecast. General purchases also have an approval step here. Okay, so we've got initiation down. What about recording? Pause and write down what you think comes next before moving on. Once we've got the forecast or purchase requisition, the purchasing department takes over by raising a PO. That supplier master file information from before, it comes into play here. The ERP system also assigns each PO a unique number. Boom, the transaction is in the system. Alright, your turn. Pause while you figure out the processing steps and I'll see you after the break. Did that take a while? Don't worry, that's normal. Processing is usually the biggest phase. First, we've got a couple of decision points. The purchasing department processes POs for hotels differently to general purchases and only handles purchases for more than $2,000. Let's deal with the hotels first. The purchasing department makes block reservations and puts down a deposit, which is recorded as a prepayment. We know from before that anything $2,000 or less goes through the branch or department, while anything more is done by purchasing. Those supplier invoices come through the finance for processing, and we've got another decision point. Anything without a valid PO is knocked back, and only supplier invoices which match POs get logged in the system. After that, we've got another decision point. Airline invoices go straight to Vince, and hotel invoices are subjected to a couple of additional checks and sign-offs before going through to Vince. For general purchases, anything $2,000 or less went through the department or branch directly, so they'll already have the supply invoice. For anything above, the finance team will pass the supply invoice to the department or branch manager for authorization. At the end of all the processing, we should have a supply invoice that has been approved for payment. Once the finance team has logged the final supply invoices, the ones which were $2,000 or less, we're officially at the end of any processing differences. Whew, almost there. What's left to go in the reporting phase? Hit pause and see what you can come up with. Ready? Here's what I've got. Approved supplier invoice in hand, the finance department can finally code the invoice to the appropriate general ledger accounts and book the journal. This updates the ERP system and puts the supplier invoice into a queue for automatic electronic payment. Congrats! You've just finished understanding Monty Travel's purchase to pay process. Hopefully, you're now more comfortable with the 4 phases of a process. Just remember, initiation is where the transaction begins, recording is when the transaction first gets into the system, and reporting is when the transaction is reported into the general ledger. Everything else is processing. That's a wrap on understanding the process. If you got a bit lost, just download the complete flowchart from My Learning so that you can follow along when you rewatch this video. You can also click here to revisit the theory from part 1. Otherwise, stay tuned to see how we'll identify risks at the process level and walk through controls in part 3.